Good day, everyone, and welcome to this episode number 17 of CGVinny's Coffee Breaks. Super happy to be here with you. I'm Vincent, and today I am with a special invitee that will put light on your life. I hope you like the introduction. Hello, Michael. So let's see where you are. Hey, Michael, how is it going?
Hello, I'm doing great. How's everybody doing today?
Well, I hope everyone is great. 9 people in the chat at the moment. Luis Alcala, that you know, of course, who was there yesterday. He was the interviewee, so he wants to check if you are doing well.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what actually happened was you kidnapped him after yesterday's session, and you just locked him in the chat window.
Exactly.
So
right now, and it works this way with everyone because I'm pretty sure Kelly Rico is on the chat as well. Actually, let me put this view right now. So hi everyone. Hi Alejandro. Hi Kishi, who wanted to learn French. So, bonjour Kishi. Luis. Or like hola Luis, but we can do it in English. You're actually better in English than me. And Alejandro as well. So it's a pleasure, Michael, to be with you because you have. I have the luxury to talk with a lot of people, and with all of them has an interesting parkour, and you as well. So can you tell us a bit about what you do today and what you did before? So I'll let you do that.
Sure. Yeah. So today I am I'm the head of a 3D technical artist team at Adobe on the Substance team that we work on. So basically what I do today is I run a global team of artists, and we do two things, and we do them a lot. So anybody who's interested in Substance, we will give them demonstrations on the software, show them how they can use it in their various workflows, whether they're a gaming company or a fashion company or industrial designer, whatever the case may be. Everybody uses 3D a little bit differently, and we'll show them how Substance can help. And then after they purchase the software, we'll also conduct training sessions and things like that. We'll also do like webinars and conference calls and conferences and things like that. But really, I joke that we just sit around playing with Substance all day long and occasionally flip on our webcams to show people what we're up to. And so that's basically it. And I've been at Adobe for 3 years now. But prior to that, I spent well, I'm getting old pretty fast. Hello, Kelly. And yes, and so before that, and Alexandre, and before that, I spent 13 years on animated films. So I was a lighting artist at Blue Sky Studios. So I did 10 films in my time there. So we did 3 Ice Ages, 2 Rios, Epic, Ferdinand, Peanuts, and Spies in Disguise. And the last one's Nimona. Nimona is up for an Academy Award. Well. So Snoopy the Peanuts movie. Yeah, depending on what country you're in, it's called different things.
Oh, right, yes. right. For me, it's Snoopy, but sorry.
Yeah. No, it's great. No, I've got that's one of my favorite. I thought I was going to get fired prior to that movie because it was like, hey, everybody, we're doing a Peanuts movie. And I was, as a lighting artist, I was like, oh no, it's just flat.
Oh yeah, it's super flat shading.
Wow. Like I need to start updating my resume. But that actually turned out to be one of the more complex movies I've ever lit. It was intense. We can talk about it, but that was one of the more intense lighting challenges.
Yeah, I can imagine, because from what I remember, it was a mix of flat shading and not real, but shading. So yeah, we'll speak about that. So, as you say, lighting artists, so that's great because you know about materials and etc. But we receive a lot of people who are specialized into materials. So having someone with your profile who can speak about light, and that's the first time I don't have to retouch the camera, because I even asked you, is my camera okay? Because you have way more experience than me to lit yourself. So yeah, everything, I just removed all of the filters. Say, okay, this will be fine. I'm trusting you. I won't do lighting on your own lighting. That would be enough.
Thanks. No, you're more than welcome to. Part of being a lighting artist for this long is you are very open to critiques all the time, constantly. Like, you are constantly being critiqued on what you do. So please feel free.
That's funny, because that's one of the key roles where we say, okay, if you do good lighting, no one will notice, in a sense that the result would be great and for everyone, but you can directly enhance or ruin the work on everyone before during the pipeline because it's so key. It comes at what time does it come during the process? Mostly when
Oh,
the scene is done.
yeah, almost at the very end. I mean, it's basically once we get the shot, the animation has been locked in, the materials have been locked in, and by locked in I mean they've been director approved. The effects, all the effects elements, theoretically, and by the way, this is all theoretical. Like theoretically, everybody's like, okay, there's a checkpoint right before it goes into lighting, or this is the way we used to work, where everyone would sign off on it, and then they would pass it into lighting, and then you would add the lighting effects, and then it would go to final render before final compositing, which you would end up doing most of the time anyway. But either you or a more advanced compositor would finish the shot, and then it would go. Then it would either go to stereo if you were doing a 3D film to make sure that the right eye and left eye looked good, and then it would just go to color timing and then into the final film. So you were right. You were right at the end of the process. Now, more and more because of the way that lighting works, we were trying to, and many studios do this, where they integrate lighting, a rough lighting pass earlier into the process because you get a better understanding of the scene.
Okay.
And what this does is it ultimately, and if you're working by yourself, I highly recommend doing this because laying out, like the camera, the depth of field, where generally are going to be your light and dark patches, will tell you where you need to add detail to your shots. Because so often we would get notes like, we would do the lighting and put like the deep background way out of focus or in shadow or something. And the animator would be like, but there's a performance back there I want to see. And we're just like,
oops.
Okay. So we'd have to like lift the depth of field a lot to allow this, and then the director would say, yes, that was a performance that we worked on. We'd like the audience to be able to read that. And so we'd have to change the look of it. But if we were able to communicate that earlier in the process, the animator or other people could have made adjustments. It was also a big thing too with materials, because if you have like a bookshelf in the background, we would have somebody go through and texture every book and put a title on each one and and then it would be back there and all of a sudden it would just be blurred out. So it didn't matter anyway. So it could have just been a flat, one single polygon with a picture of a bookcase on it or something. So having that lighting and contextual information is really, really helpful for when you're going through your process.
Cool. And previously to that, I assume did you study on this, or you are self-taught person, or?
No, not really. I mean, I studied. So I thought I was gonna be a doctor, and then I went in. When I was like 17 or 18, I did because I had knee surgery, and I was like, oh, I should be an orthopedic surgeon. That would be really cool. And then I sat in on one surgery. I was lucky enough to talk to get somebody who would let me sit in on it. And I was like 30 seconds into that. I was like, nope, hard pass. Never gonna be okay cutting somebody. That's not me. So I went to college and I studied photography.
Okay.
Because that was like my first intro into a creative thing. And then I graduated college and I am a terrible professional photographer. Like I just don't like it. I don't want to do it. I love taking photographs, but transitioning that into a professional career was not my strong suit. At the time I was like, I didn't know how to direct people. I didn't like any of it. So I just bartended and I worked at an art gallery for a couple years until Finding Nemo came out. And then there was this behind the scenes of all these artists going scuba diving off the coast of Australia. And they used that visual reference to they were lighting artists. So they were, and which by the way, at the time I didn't know was a job that existed. I had no idea. And so I was like, wow, because they designed the look of the film, and then they, created the water in a certain way at different points, whether they were close to the shore or far off in the open ocean. And so they did it that was like location specific, but also it really hyped up the emotion. So when they're at open sea and everything's good, it's crystal clear blue water, everything's great. As they're getting closer to Sydney, it gets greener, darker, murkier. You can see less deep into the water. And I was just like blown away at this idea of using your visuals to drive the story in the film. And so I decided to, I think I'd taken one 3D modeling class in Cinema 4D. And then I decided that I was going to kind of pursue this. So I started teaching myself more 3D stuff at night. And then I started putting together a small portfolio that I used to apply to graduate schools. And then I got into the Savannah College of Art and Design for grad school.
Oh, nice.
And Yeah, and a lot of that was because of my photography past. They were like, "Oh, you could," because they're like, "Oh, you're a photographer. You could help integrate stuff into live action plates." And I was like, "Okay, sure." I didn't even really know what that meant at the time. I was like, "Sure, of course, yeah, of course, I can do anything." Just like weird, unearned confidence, and so I did. And so I was in school for a couple years, and then I got a job at Blue Sky as a render wrangler, which was it was the job title was lighting technical assistant.
Okay.
But basically, my job was I was just doing a lot of file management, and I would just be the person who checked to make sure the render farm, all the machines rendering the frames were staying on all night long, and that the air conditioning was working and all that stuff.
Okay.
So it was a low level job, but yeah, that's how I got into it.
Well, we have to start somewhere. So at the end, it leads you to all the career, all the movies that you did. And also, I think we can say you are kind of somehow an influencer. At least you are sharing a lot of stuff. Especially you do have a newsletter that I read every time. I'm going to share that. So let me do this. So somehow, of course, I lost the page. So let me fix that. Be patient.
That's right. While you're pulling that up, I can tell.
Yeah.
So while I was at Blue Sky, I'll let you talk about it now. I'll tell the story.
Yeah, here you go. So I'm starting with that. We're going to see your website, but I want to start with that because I found it awesome. First of all, you also have a YouTube channel, and in the description, I should have put your link tree with all your links. But this one, I'm really inviting you to subscribe to this newsletter. It's like once a week, generally. Maybe twice, because you make also some curation of art.
So I've for the last year and a half, I've written an article that I publish every in the US it's Sunday evening, but early in Europe Monday morning, and then every Wednesday I just do an artist highlight where I feature 3 artists who are actively looking for work, who I think are fantastic. So I just kind of want to do a little marketing for them and send out their work. So I do that every Wednesday.
And this is great because I would say that this is almost philosophic sometimes, but I like the time, because sometimes it's really clear and concrete topics about lighting or about how to set up a scene, but with tricks that are extremely interesting, like the notion that you don't think about, but you, with your experience, you were, for example, the blackest point. At some point, you have to define the darkest point of an image, something that I didn't know, for example. And sometimes it's more reflections about where the industry goes, how to set up as a new artist, how to prepare yourself, etc., etc. What about the new artificial intelligence? The last one was about that, how it won't replace the artist at the end. So these are pretty interesting. Just take the time. I'm going to put the link directly in the chat for people who are there. There is 14 people watching right now, so if you don't have 14 people subscribing at the end of the chat, I would be really sad. So this
Fantastic.
but this is really good, and it's worth it. Definitely have a look at this. I don't know if you want to add something else about why you started to do this, or.
Yeah, I mean, I can. So my general philosophy is, when I started in this industry, again, I was bartending, I was waiting tables, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so finding this career path for myself was very. It's special. It's been a special experience for me to kind of find my value, and so I thought early on in my career that I would kind of share that as much as I could to get other people along for the ride. And one of the things when I was at Blue Sky, we would do recruiting trips to colleges, and it started where we would talk to students, and I would notice that there was this huge gap in what they thought they needed to know for the industry versus what they actually needed to know. And so often it was and the main thing was they just because at the time it was learning V-Ray or learning mental ray. And they were like, oh, I know all about mental ray. And I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's I don't know why you're telling me this. And it was no, I care about the art that you make. I care, we have software, and you're going to have to learn it when you come into the studio. We have proprietary stuff, and even if the studios that don't, they have proprietary workflows. So even if like your technical knowledge, cool, but like I want to see that you can make beautiful images, and so I want to see that you know about composition and balance and getting the character to separate from the background and like lighting a character in a pleasant way. So they would have all these like it was very concerned about making sure that they hit all the criteria on the job application. Like I know this software and this render engine, and it was like, yeah, that stuff is there, but really the thing that we're evaluating is your eye and your ability to create a beautiful image. So it started there, and so I was like, okay, I need to tell people about this. So my coworker at the time, and which is one of my good friends, Jasmine Katatakarn, we started an online school where we were teaching this. We just tried, we would talk about it, we would try and be open about it, and I've kind of led that down the road. So we wrote a book together about lighting, and it's just kind of led into this.
Can you remind me the name of the book?
Yeah, if you scroll down, it should be in there somewhere. It's just called lighting for animation. Is it in here somewhere? Yeah, it should be. Maybe not. Okay, go. Yeah, go up to the top and go to media. Sorry.
Okay.
So inside that one, if you scroll down, there's the book, Lighting for Animation: The Art of Visual Storytelling. We wrote that a few years ago, but again, I don't know why the YouTube link hasn't rotated, but either way, it's the hardcover's now up to $180. Don't buy it in hardcover. So we did, I don't know why that's so expensive. So this is our publisher that does. So we were reached out to because we'd started this like idea, and basically we wrote this book several years ago, but the whole thing is like that technology will change, as we're seeing every day all the time. But what's important about being a professional artist is your eye and training that up. So this book teaches you how to look at lighting in a different way and understand it, and think about it in terms of how to always make a good image. And so that's always kind of been my thesis. So it took us 1.5 years to write that book, and about 1 year ago, I got the urge to like do some more writing, and I was like, man, should I do another book? And then it was like, I just need to, like, that's too much work. I didn't want to have to go through the whole process of the publisher and the whole thing. So I just started writing this newsletter, and like you said, yeah, every week it's different, but it's all geared towards different goals of being a 3D artist. So lots of times it'll be, yeah, like you said, like balancing your black points in your image. Lots of times it'll be like, hey, this new AI feature just came out, and I always like be like, and I'm always like, remember, the software doesn't matter. Being an artist matters. Like this just makes you produce. The things can get produced faster, but you still need your eye to determine what is a good image and how to make it better. Anyway.
Yeah.
Or like, I think I've done sometimes too, which is just like the logistics of being an artist, like how to negotiate your salary, what do you do your first couple days at work, and all that stuff. So yeah, this page has lots of links to things I've said online, so you can follow that.
Definitely subscribe to it. It's worth it. And we're going to have a look also at your artworks, because of course you have like an impressive portfolio. And filmography, which is here. So it starts. Let's go back.
Did I put these chronologically? Yeah, I put these chronologically. So my first one, Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs, Ice Age 3. So that was the first film that I worked on. I got to light, I believe, 11 shots in that movie. That's when I was render wrangling, and I convinced them. I proved my worth enough where they let me have some. I would say minor shots in the film, so I got to do that. But according to my children, I totally made that movie all by myself.
Yeah, that's what you have to say anytime. Yeah, I did everything, and
anyway. I voiced the characters. I designed it also. Yeah, and then we went into Rio, and then we did. So Rio was the first time, and I could talk about this if you want. I have a whole lighting presentation. I can talk through some of the stuff. I've got some behind the scenes stuff on Rio we can talk about. Let's see. Then we did Ice Age 4. Then Epic. Epic was awesome. Epic was my favorite movie to work on. If you haven't seen it, it's awesome. About a bunch of little. There's little people that live in the woods. It was all like macro photography. Look to it, like super high depth of field. Kind of like lots of fantasy stuff to light. It was. I had a great relationship with our lighting supervisor, and the director is a guy named Chris Wedge, who founded Blue Sky Studios. He's the voice of Scrat. He directed the first Ice Age movie. Brilliant guy. Also directed this movie. And it was just such a, that was that perfect synergy of like, I was working with artists that I loved, the director I loved, the lighting supervisor I loved. Like everything kind of came together in that one film, that was probably like some of the, but it's yeah, just some of my favorite work I've done.
And I really enjoy this movie, the story. I spent a really good time watching this one, even if it was not as didn't make as much buzz as Ice Age of Rio, for example, but still it's super good.
Yeah, and there was some like and there was some behind the scenes stuff again on this. It's like we because Chris Wedge, the guy who wrote and directed this, he had this whole story for a long time, and we couldn't make the movie forever because it was set in the woods, and at the time in the 2000s, doing a film set in the woods was just too complicated. It was too much foliage, too much. It would take too long to render. We'd never get it done in time. Until we found some optimization processes that allowed us to do it. But even then, the movie is based on a book called The Leafman and the Battle of the Good Bugs, which was what it was originally called, and then the Suits got involved and changed the name to Epic, and that was one of the saddest meetings we ever had. Was when they were like, "Yeah, we're changing the name of the film to Epic," and we were like, "Oh, that's not a good name." and then there were some other things that mixed into. It was like, "Hey, Steven Tyler is a voice, like he's now on American Idol, and part of his contract was he needs to be in other Fox, production. So could you guys put him in the movie?" And so then we had to like write a role for Steven Tyler to be a singing frog. So different things happened during the production, but that kind of we lost the thread a little bit on it. But it's still like my favorite movie that we worked on. It was just cool to be a part of that one.
And is there one which was for some reason most challenging than the other one? Or I guess they're all a challenge, but
they're all a challenge. The Peanuts movie, the Snoopy and Charlie Brown movie,
this one
was visually. I would say that was probably because that was the first time we did like photo real, or not that the rest of the movies are photo real, but they're like leaning towards that way. This one was much more stylized, and there was a very specific style that we needed to hit, and it, like needed to vibe with the Schultz people wanted. So this one was all about, we had light, like if you guys know light linking, it's where you tie a light to a specific object. Mm-hmm. And for this, like they wanted, in every shot, Charlie Brown's head had to look a certain way, his shoes had to look a certain way, his shirt had to look a certain way. And so we had different light rigs for every part of the character. So like his skin had one light rig, his shirt had a different light rig, his pants, but it was like we had to make them all cohesive, but also make them so that they met the visual standards of each individual object. Like, and then also in every single frame of every shot, there are these things, the eye highlights, the eye dings. If you look at the Epic movie poster, you see those two white little dots in her eyes. We called those eye dings, and those were eye reflections. We had to do so much work on those. So in this particular frame of Peanuts, they both have their eyes closed. But if you watch the movie, you will see these circles that follow their eyes everywhere they look all the time. And that was a lighter or a compositor hand animating these eye dings around in the composite. So it was a lot of like tedious work. And also the movie was animated on 2s to give that like kind of stop motion thing. So, but if you animate something in Nuke, it animates on 1s. So you'd have to like, you'd have to animate it a certain way to match a character. So it was and this is a good example. So Nimona and Peanuts were visually simplified looking films, right? Like they look, but getting that simplified look is more difficult for mostly because renderers are set up. Like we used RenderMan on Nimona, and then when we originally were working on, I should caveat by that saying the amazing artists at Double Negative at DNEG finished it. But when we were working on it, we used RenderMan, and renderers are set up to calculate light and materials in a realistic way, with bounce light, with this and with that. But like if you look at the shadow on the side of her face, that is not a natural shadow. So we had to create custom non-photoreal shaders to get that look. So anytime that you're defining the look of something outside of reality, it's harder because you have to be like, wait, so you want the shadow to be sharp? Like, what about this situation? What about that situation? Then you have to like create. It's just a lot more custom work. You can't leave it to the computer to calculate the proper amount of bounce light, because then it'll just look off.
It reminds me what they say on Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse. It was the same thing where they say, okay, we have this tool that during like decades we try to be as realistic as possible, and now we are going to destroy that, change the frame rate, make like some cartoonish animation to get back to the comic feeling. And it kind of say we have two. We have two comments in the chat. So we have Miyo Shinohara, who said hello from Tokyo. So hi, Mio. And there is a guy called Luis Alcala who said, hey, you should have written a script to do that. And yes, and they say exactly the same thing. Like the new Spider-Man movie is super stylized. So as there is a difference of something like 15 seconds, we got the same idea, Luis. But that's crazy. Sometimes same stuff when you choose a style and to look natural at the end, sometimes you have to break something. And I'm assuming also for Peanut, as it came with a already existing strong cartoon stuff, once the new style was approved, you had to respect it to death. Because
when a film, so like the Barbie movie, or when we did Horton Hears a Who, which was before my time at Blue Sky, you work with the company that owns the IP of that. So there's the Schultz family, the Schultz group owns Snoopy. The Dr. Seuss people own Horton Hears Who, and so you have to kind of, you work with them. And like for Barbie, they work with Mattel. Like you have to work with them to make sure you're staying on their brand identity, and like it's a collaboration in the effort to make it look a certain way. And for Peanuts, like if you think about that time period, so that was the time period when like the Smurfs movie was coming out, the Garfield movie was coming out, like so there were all these movies that were transitioning old comics or animation into modern 3D things. And so like when it was announced that we were going to do the Snoopy movie, it was met with like groans of people going, oh. And then when we released it, it was like it was good. It's a good movie, and we worked so hard to stay true to the original content that was like the best compliments that we got. It was like, they didn't screw it up. They didn't mess up this franchise. We're like, yes, I know we didn't. We worked really hard. So it stayed on brand. So if anybody's watching this or the recording, I always recommend this if you have like a little kid who you want to like show them their first movie. It's great because there's no bad guys. The movie is broken up like it's got a comic strip feel to it because it's broken up into these little vignettes. Like there is like an overarching story to the movie, but it's much more about these like small. It's almost episodic in the way that we did it, because it was like we knew that we needed to like capture kids' attention for this period and this period, because it's geared towards a younger audience. Like that was one of the things about Epic, because whenever you're making a movie, there's always a target audience. Usually multiple. It's like this movie we're targeting, 8 to 10-year-old kids who are interested in these things. And so with Peanuts, we were going for the G rating. It was a much younger audience. Epic was more advanced and a little bit more of like an action adventure movie for like a 10-year-old. So it's kind of you have to balance that.
Yeah. And then we have Ferdinand, who's in Spain, if I'm not wrong, Andalusia. So it was nice as well. A taureau a bull who doesn't want to fight. That was great. That was that was a super fun one too. And that was the so John Cena voices Ferdinand. Yeah.
And he is, so not everybody is great, but he was just the best. He did everything. He did every like marketing thing, every appearance. He would wear the Ferdinand horns around. He was very proud of the movie, and it was such a, and that was a fun movie to work on too, because it was kind of a we like Rio was great because we embraced the Brazilian culture. The director of that film is from Brazil, and really Brazil is the main character of that movie, more so than the birds or the people or anything like that. The Ferdinand was kind of the same idea, where it's like this culture of the bull stadiums, and the whole thing was a big part of that film. And like that was a fun one. It's very hard to light a character that's mostly that has that's very dark, like almost black, like Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Because there's some special things that needed to go in there too.
I can imagine. And this one, Nimona, which is both a sad and a beautiful story at the end, because that was the last started production in Blue Sky, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so we did. So Blue Sky closed in 2021. It was purchased by Disney as part of an acquisition of 20th Century Fox, and then after a couple years of being under Disney, they decided to close the studio. At the time of the closure, we had just finished a series of Scrat shorts for Disney Plus called Scrat Tales, and I'll start there because we were able to slip in one last shot in the very last one of those, which was Scrat actually getting the acorn, and he so if you look at that, there's a final shot, and that was just for us. Like we didn't look for approval on that. We had some animators just set up the shot. We pushed it through the pipeline after we were all laid off of like, okay, if we're going out, we're gonna let Scrat finally get his acorn. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And then we were also like about a year into making Nimona. And so Nimona, if you don't know, it's about it's based on a graphic novel, and it's based on this character Nimona, who's a shapeshifter. She can, you see her at the dragon wings there. She can become any animal, any person, anything that she wants to be. And the whole film, there's obviously like some adventure and there's a storyline to it, but she's, it's a movie about her trying to find her true form. And the other lead character is this guy named Ballister, and he's like, can you please just stay a girl? And she's like, but I'm not a girl, I'm Nimona. And the whole film is about her trying to find her place. We talk to and trying to find her identity, and there's a huge connection for this film and the trans community. And so we in the process and in the creation, there were lots of trans artists that were spoken with about the film. There were a lot of trans artists that worked on it. There's a lot of and so it's a heavy theme that we really leaned into when making this, and I don't think Disney was that crazy about it. So I think that led to some of the decisions that were made, and then but luckily after everybody was laid off, luckily we had this hero, the woman who runs Annapurna Pictures, came in and said this movie needs to be made. And so Annapurna picked up was able to acquire the rights somehow in some backroom deal. I don't know how they did this from Disney. And then they were able to bring the directors and some of the producers and some of the key people on that film over. And then they worked with Double Negative in London to actually make it, and then Netflix to release it. So it was kind of this movie that wouldn't die story. And then it just got nominated for the Academy Award, which was very cool. And it was like this full, it's like this character, this story about resiliency and finding yourself was, in despite of everything else, kind of like feeds the story of how the film got created. So it's been a very cool ride to watch.
And did you speak a bit about with your ex-colleagues about the result on Netflix, saying if it was close to what to the team vision, more or less, or
it was I like right before, one of the last things that we did was we did a screening of the movie together virtually, because it was still during COVID. And it was where the current state of the film, and we thought at the time that was going to be, we were going to be the only people that ever saw this thing. And it was like, a bunch of storyboards mixed in with final renders and everything. We watched it and it was like, man, and I remember just being like, man, that's a good movie. It sucks that like nobody else is ever going to see this. And then that's the movie that was created. So we were at the time. The nice thing is at the time, there was a lot of things kind of like there's the other lead characters in the same-sex relationship. There's a lot of like just progressive ideas in the film that we had to almost hide from Disney when we were making it. Like they kind of like, we won't show them that scene yet.
It takes time.
Because sometimes it's like, we're gonna hide this over here. But having somebody who is open to the theme and who was fully behind it made all the difference, because it was clearly, because that's where films kind of go awry, right? When you watch them and you can kind of feel that it's like kind of a muddled story, and you don't really see where it's going, and then all of a sudden like a character gets introduced and you don't understand why. That's all because there have been notes usually added by other people after the fact who are trying to like manipulate the original vision of the project.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, it really like this was the vision. It was working with the author of the graphic novel, who was an incredible human being, and then the directors, and it was just like really like it was like this was the movie that was. It took many years to make it, but that was the movie that was made.
Yeah, which is good at the end. And well, you didn't stop there, of course. After this, you are still making lots of stuff. So yeah, we talked a bit before to say, okay, what are we going to talk about some of your artworks that you did for either for project, professional project, or pleasure. So can you remind me which one should we see first?
So you can start with just this abstract sculpture in the upper right there. We can start there. Like, and it's not special in that because I just want to tell this story a little bit to anybody that's out there. So when I was in school, I got this job at the studio. I worked there for 13 years. I was a lighting artist. Awesome, right? And but the thing is that when you work somewhere for a really long time, especially in a pipeline like this, you get like I was using their proprietary tools and their proprietary workflow to do a very specific job. I was just lighting animated like things, and so after you do that for that long, you kind of and then you get laid off and you get released back in the world. It's a weird feeling because you're like, oh my gosh, do I even know how to model anymore? Do I know how to I've worked with textures for years, but I haven't physically done it in a while. Like, can I do all this stuff? And so this project of just making abstract sculptures, and actually the models I got from, these are splash elements from the Substance Asset Library, like water splashes. I just turned them into different sculptures of different materials. And this was really just a way of me being like, okay, I need to shake off the rust and be an artist again. Like this was, after years and years of telling everyone like, you need to do this. Like this was me doing it myself, and like being in my late 30s and remembering that I do still have the skills and the knowledge to do this stuff. So this was just for me. Nobody asked me to do this, and so I just wanted to make some different materials. And I got inspired because I was in Austin, Texas, and where my brother lives, and I took my kids and my niece and nephew to this like outdoor sculpture garden, and there are all these like oversized abstract sculptures that were like had like really pretentious little signs around them, like that were like talking about the meaning of life. And I was like, I'm pretty sure this is just a swirly, squiggly piece of thing. So I was like, but anyway, the work itself was really beautiful. So I was like, I'm just gonna make some abstract sculpture and put him and put it and like play with different materials and whatever, and then. So that was me breaking through my own personal hindrances, my own hiccups on this stuff, was to make this project. And then if you go back, there was one more I can show too. And then so I got and this was when I was working at Adobe now, and so this was a lot of like, and this is also the first time because Adobe is so supportive of Vincent and I doing our own things, like Vincent having this YouTube series and me being an artist and publishing my stuff, that when you work on films, you get none of that. It's all like, don't share what you're doing. Don't talk about the film. You got to sign all these NDAs. Everything's behind closed doors and quiet until the film is released.
Yeah.
Where Adobe is very much like so supportive of us being independent artists. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this unique opportunity that I'm in, but I got to get over my mental hurdle that I haven't worked in any, I hadn't touched any off-the-shelf software other than Nuke in a very long time because just because that wasn't the tools that we were working on. So I did this, and then if you go to another project, if you go back a page.
This one was made, did you use a Painter on this one, right?
Oh. Yeah, so that was Painter rendered in Stager.
Oh, Stager as well, okay.
So that was me forcing myself to use a tool. So if you scroll to the top, there's the one of the little boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is cool.
So this was another one that was like, again. So I did everything on this other than the original design. The original design was a guy, Rich Jamel. You can link to his work. He's an awesome. He's an awesome 2D illustrator, and I loved his work. And he made something similar. He made something like this. So I reached out to him. I was like, dude, I gotta make some of your work into 3D stuff, and he was like, "Yes, let's do it." And so we worked and so he let me use his stuff as reference. So he was my reference, but everything was modeled in Substance Modeler. I textured it in Substance Painter, rendered it in Substance Stager, and this was again just like me pushing myself to make something completely myself, right? And to see if I could do it. And this was also in alignment with when I moved I lived in New York City for like 15 years, and that was all my whole time at Blue Sky Studios, and then a little bit after, I moved in Berkeley, California, in the Bay Area. And so it takes like a month or so to get all your furniture and everything. So all I had was a laptop computer, and so I was like, I want to see if I can, without the fancy. It was a bad laptop computer too, and I was like, I want to see if I can actually make, because I'm always preaching that you don't need a good computer. You don't need all the you don't need all the fanciness to make art. Again, it doesn't matter what software it is. You can make anything with anything. So I was like, this crappy little computer, and so I did that, and I made this project entirely on that computer, like sitting on my floor. Without any furniture while I was waiting for stuff to come out. So it took about a month to do it. But yeah, so this was a forced challenge in myself.
You know that I love this one actually, because it shows how it's done, because when you see the image, the full image like that, there is a composition, of course, depth of field, etc. So you can even imagine a full world, a story, etc. And when we see that, you see, okay, if you find the right angle and you know what you want to, if you know where you want to shine, you don't have to model everything. It's just simple shape, properly placed, properly, of course, textured and lit. But yeah, that shows a bit I don't know how to say the reverse of the setup. Yeah. But that's great. I think it's also motivating.
Yeah, don't overwork yourself. Like you don't like that was the original image. So like I knew what I wanted. I knew I just kind of wanted a view like that. I knew, you got the character throwing the fish in the sea, and I knew that like I didn't have to make, the character doesn't have a face. It's just a sphere on there. It's like, there's no the birds are just like 4 polygons that are kind of like in a V shape that are way back there, because I knew they were going to be out of focus. So it just didn't matter. And then my favorite, and again, we do this on film. So like in Spies in Disguise, one of my fellow artists came up with this brilliant idea. So it was like, there was a scene where characters were talking in a downtown area, and the background just seemed very static. So they're like, we need to put some cars back there. So the idea was like, okay, we'll send this shot back to layout. They'll put in some cars, then we'll send it to animation. Animation will animate the cars, then we'll send it to lighting, and lighting can put the lights on, and blah blah blah. And this one lighting artist was like, hold on, let me try something real quick. And he went into the composite and just put like two white circles or like a white circle and a red circle, and just animated them moving along. And since it was like in the background and out of focus, it didn't matter. Like it looked like it was enough. It looked like a car moving. And so they were like, yeah, can you just make a few more of those? So there's a sequence in Spies in Disguise where it looks like there are cars in the background, but really it's just like circles of color moving, like about the distance of a car, just moving like this. So yeah, you don't have to work that hard.
Yeah. Don't know if you want to show another artwork, or if we share your screen, so if you want to share some tips and tricks.
Sure.
Okay. So
sure, I can. Yeah, I can do it. So if I can do a little bit of a live session. I can also. Sorry, I move around too much. I'm getting off top.
I took you by surprise.
I will actually show this. So I kind of had a couple things up, but I'll talk a little bit more about the lighting stuff and specifically, just because I want to make sure. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I'm going to put in full screen like that, and yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'll talk through this. So this is kind of my default presentation on lighting. And this is just, again, kind of the way that I feel about it. So this is something so that's me. Hi, I'm Mike. These are the films I worked on. There's the book. I started the Academy of Animated Art. Now work for Substance. So this is some pictures from Blue Sky Studios, because people always ask like, what's a day in the life like for a lighting artist. So we go in on, I forget what day of the week. I think it was like Monday. We would have fruit, so you get set up there, and these were some of the more creative cubicles that people put together for themselves. So it's a cubicle job, but it was at the time. Now it's more remote, but it's a pretty good place to work. There's me in the bottom right down here, working underneath my paper chandelier.
Nice.
And so basically, when you're working as a lighting artist, you kind of your job is very straightforward. Like you come in in the morning, you check your overnight renders, you make adjustments in the composite. So the composite is basically like because you render everything out as elements, as individual components, and then you bring them together in a compositing package and make them look the final way. But you usually have like an hour or so before you have to go into your rounds or your dailies. Every company calls it something different. But basically you go in there, you sit down, and the people who are approving your shot will look at your work. They go through, okay, next shot, okay, do that, make this darker, make this brighter. We need to, this shot needs to feel more colorful. This shot needs to feel this, that. You get your notes, you go back to your desk, you work on those shots the rest of the day. At the end of the day, you render out the frames. The next morning, you pick them up, you composite, and you do it again, until the shots are done. Eventually, they'll look at a shot and be like, okay, this is approved. This is ready to go in the movie. So the process of taking a shot from start to finish. So again, this is from Rio. So my buddy Jasmine, who I worked with at Blue Sky, put this stuff together originally. So these were her shots from this sequence. So basically, when you're the way that the structure works, when the film there's the film, and then a film is broken up into sequences, and sequences are anytime that there's a change in location or time. So in this sequence, it was all about this. Let me see. So this sequence was all about basically a nightclub inside of Rio de Janeiro. So one light lead will be given that sequence as their job. They're like in charge of that sequence from the lighting side of it. And they would usually go in and pick like 3 to 5 shots, and then work with the art director who already had a vision for the sequence. So they would put together something like this. These are called color keys, and they would give you guidance on how the film would look. And then you talk to the director, and the director was like, okay, the sequence starts out like Blue, the main character, is a little unsure of the of what he's getting into. So maybe the sequence starts off a little bit more dark and contrasty, but then as he gets more comfortable and he starts dancing himself, like you can lift the dark values and like you can play with the emotion of the scene a little bit through some of the lighting keys. So you get this, you get the shots, and again, they're already animated, the materials are already there. And then as the lead, you work with the director and the art director to final like 5 shots. So take your shots all the way through and make them look as good as you possibly can. And then once those kind of 5 shots meet the criteria and everyone signs off on it, then a team gets assigned. And then that sequence is broken up into individual shots, and artists are given their shot assignment. So this was Jasmine's assignment. She had to light these 12 shots. Usually we were on a quota of like 3 or 4 shots a week. So with the weekly time. So this is about like lighting these 12 shots takes about a month of work for a lighting artist. And then the lighting artist's job is to take what was done, both the light rig and the visuals that were created, and then light your shots to match that goal, right? So because you kind of have to, everything has to play in a sequence. And again, this isn't how every studio does it. This is just how we did it. So it's a pretty good indicator of how other companies do it too. So it's like master shot, and then individuals have to match that look and match each other. So you're constantly working in isolation, and then every day in rounds you go in and you view the entirety of the sequence to see what's standing out and making sure everything flows together well.
Okay.
And then so this is the shot that was kind of focused on. It's not going to animate because it's a long story, but basically I did this presentation was in PowerPoint and now it's in PDF form. So basically, so you get the shot, you get your color keys. This was all the information about the shot, like the frame rate. This is the way the Maya scene was laid out. Again, don't overthink it. Like we've got this inside of the club, but there's nothing else. There's no other buildings or anything around it. We worked in Linux, so everything is Linux shell based. So it was a lot of typing in shell windows like this. And then this was the renderer that we used at Blue Sky. It was a proprietary thing called CGI Studio. And there was no GUI for lighting, right? There was just this thing that was called quick render that would render the results of what you did, and then you would have to type in all of your attributes of your lighting into a script like this. So that block of text to the right that's being highlighted, that's a light. And lights are given specific characteristics. The color is an RGB value, the intensity. Diffuse equals 0 means it's only emitting specular light. There's no diffuse light coming out of it. And the move is like the position of the light, how big the radio is, whether like what kind of shadow it's casting. And so you can see this light is just called chain spec. So literally this light, its only job is to add more specular light to the chain.
That seems super unintuitive to use, but I guess when you're used to it,
you get so used to it. And the thing that's nice about it is it's very copyable from shot to shot.
Oh yes,
right? And it's very quick. So it's also an external file. So if the renderer crashes, you still have this text file open over here. Also, they're very easy to back up. So there were a lot of positives to it, but yeah, at first it was like, I'm sorry, I'm doing everything in text prompt. Right? And this is what this is why I'm not joking when I say the software knowledge, like these movies were made in a text box, like because I was like, oh, because so when I was in school, I was like, oh, these artists at these film levels, they're making this amazing stuff. It's just because they have better tools than we have. Mm-hmm. And then I get to the studio and I'm like, actually, the tools we had in school were better than this.
Yeah.
But they're just better artists. So that's when I was like, okay, being a good artist is what's key.
Yeah, maybe we should propose that for Substance Painter, doing everything in the text command. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I have a question from someone called Luis in the chat, Luis Alcara. Mm-hmm. And what's the biggest difference in lighting for film compared to a still shot or product render, according to your experience?
Oh, that's a great question. So it's a whole other level of complexity. So when you're lighting, let's just say like a character animated shot for a film, the way that it's done is, so each shot has hero poses that the character hits, right? So they'll be like, a character will be standing here and they'll turn their head this way to talk to this person, turn their head this way to talk to this person, and then like throw up their hands like this. So when you can only light on individual frames, unless you're in like a real-time engine, like a Unreal or something, but usually you have to pick your frame. So usually you pick the hero poses and you light those first to like make those look as good as you possibly can. And then you render out a test overnight of like a super low resolution, because lots of times when a character looks good like this, but the second they turn their head this way, it's like, it looks like garbage. So then you have to like work on the transition points within the shot to make sure that everything looks good. So there's a lot of like subtly animating lights around the scene so that they look good in the different poses. There's lots of things. So we did a lot of work on the eye lighting of a character, and there's lots of things that you can hide every time a character blinks. So that whenever you're working on a shot, you see your character blink, you're like, yes, because you know that you can hide things in that. So you can. So there's a lot of nuance to it. But again, and I'll talk about this here in a second. But there's kind of some principles that you really want to focus on. But the key is like you start with stills. And you make those look good, and then you render out the animation to see, because it's like a science experiment. You just have to see what the result is, and then and then it's like fixing all the things that happen in between, because it never looks like you're like, oh no, I've got the sunlight coming in right here. It's gonna be perfect. And literally, like, I don't know if you can see my face on the live stream.
No, you have to unshare your screen.
Okay.
2 seconds.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
I can just describe this. So basically, I have a ring light off my desk here, and I'm wearing eyeglasses. And every time I look at the ring light, there's a big circle on the lens of my glasses.
Yeah.
And so like that's a classic one where you're like, my character will be looking one way and then looking another way. And then when I rotate around, it's like, oh no, there's this giant circle over his eyes. Man, I got to figure out like, and then you're like, okay, that light is not linked to their glasses. And I'll talk about glasses here in a minute. But yeah, it's a lot of just like finding the nuance in the in-between frames.
Okay. Cool.
All right, great. So this is the same shot. So again, you generally light it. We would light. This is one layer of it, but you would kind of light it in its entirety. But then you would break it up into individual layers. So you'd have things like the background, the characters would be on their own render. Always render volumetric light, like light glows is a separate one, so you can composite that in independently. And then this is a screenshot from Nuke. So this is all the individual characteristics, the individual things being brought in one at a time. And yeah, so this is just what the character looks like. You got to do some color corrections. You got to make some tweaks. You got to fix some stuff. There's lots of times like maybe a weird animation pop. You'll see right here. There's something called a frame hold. So that usually means that there was some sort of animation problem, and you got to like hold the frame before for one frame to fix something. And then you put everything together, individual components. So again, there's the background. Then you throw in the background characters. Do you see how that light looks red, green, and blue down there in the bottom right?
Yeah.
So they called this the pass. So this was a red light, a green light, and a blue light that created it's called an RGB pass. And you're able to isolate it in the comp, either the red channel, the green channel, or the blue channel. And then you can use that to animate the light. So that's what makes, when you watch this sequence and the lights are flashing, that's what makes the lights flash, are these red, green, and blue passes. And so they would do a kind of multiple versions of it. And then we'd always add in the hero characters are always separate. Notice how they're slightly brighter than everybody else. And then we add in the birds around it. And then the volumetric light, again, always render those separate so you can control those. And then that's the final in the film version of it. Yeah, and then so again, I was going to talk about eyeglasses too. So like that was a big component of this film too. So just to kind of like go into the nuance of it, and this is one of the things that I don't really talk about these specifics that much, but whenever somebody's like, "Oh, SOAR AI is here; it can replace what 3D artists are doing," you're like, "You've never worked on a film; you don't know the details that we get into." So
yeah.
like. This character is Linda. Linda wears eyeglasses. Both of our main characters wear eyeglasses. We needed to figure out what that looked like. So, okay, eyeglasses, cool. Great. So what does that mean? How much shadow do we want from the glasses casting on her face? We had to run lots of tests to see what worked the best there. So it was like, no, like absolutely no shadow to like what it would actually look like. And so we had to change down the index of refraction on there was an index value on the shadow quality itself. So we ended up leaving it at, I believe, we ended up leaving it at like 1.1. So just like a little bit of shadow on her face. And then we had to do tests of like how much reflection of the environment was in there. By the way, this is why characters never look directly at the camera because they look weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is her on LSD, yes. But it was a lot of like, how much do we see behind her? How much is it refracted? How much of the reflection do we see? And we knew that we couldn't get that look in the render. So every shot was rendered separately. You rendered the background separate. Every character looked like this, and then you would have to comp in the eyeglasses separately.
Ready?
Yeah, and also it was tricky because lots of times the background behind her would be adjusted in the comp. Like you'd make it darker, you make it brighter, you'd add some different elements to it. So you'd need to actually refract not what was in the render, but what was in the composite. So it was actually like a two-step rendering process. You'd render everything else, then you'd comp that out, then you'd render the glasses out separately, and then add those in. It was yeah. And then we'd have to add in separate reflections, and because the reflections get notes too. It's like, make sure you see the reflection, but make sure they're not including the eyes. We need to read the character's performance. And so we'd have to make all these render passes for just the eyes in order to get the look. And then, both the characters have glasses and it was in every shot. So it got to be very complex. Okay, so this is something else.
Pursue.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, are we okay on time?
Yeah, whenever.
Okay, great. So basically, that was just like a little behind the scenes into how stuff was done in Blue Sky. In this part, I just kind of want to talk about like being a lighter in general. And this is kind of one of the things that I'd like to talk about, which is when you're focused on learning this stuff, it's all about software, right? You and I, we work for a software company. We want to sell the software of what we do, but like really, people think like, oh, this is a screenshot from Houdini. Like, I just need to learn Houdini, or I just need to learn this, or I just need to learn that. And that's how I make great art. Because you see this stuff, and you see this is a bunch of student work from the online school I helped co-found, the Academy of Animated Art. This is a lighting challenge that we did of this character, Sir Desmodus Rotundus. So the student work is amazing there. You should check out the school. But basically, you see this software and then you see this artwork and you're like, oh, these people must know the software much, much better than I do. And that's why they're able to make this.
Yeah.
And it's the number one mistake that everybody makes, right? If I can just figure out the technical, that's what gets me to this amazing artwork. And there's this huge step in the middle that gets missed, and that's storytelling, visual storytelling with artwork. So what makes good visual storytelling? So for me, whenever I evaluate anything, whenever I talk about anything, it always comes down to three main elements of a successfully lit shot. So there's creating mood, there's sculpting visual shaping, like making it look interesting, basically. It's a fancy way of saying make it look good, and then directing the viewer's eye. So whenever I'm evaluating something and it's like, this isn't working for me, whenever you're at that point where you're like, I'm looking at this, it doesn't look good and I don't know why, it's because one of these three things is not working. So for mood, it's all about like light value, position, hue, saturation, overall softness to create the feel that you want. Because so often, again, like you work with the director and it's like, hey, we need the shot to feel romantic or scary or stressful. And they give you an emotion and you have to translate that emotion into a visual thing. So again, these are two shots that are on this. If I wrote out what was in the shot, are very similar. It's like two characters, kind of, mid shots, waist or knees up, by themselves in a room. But the lighting quality is very, very, very different on them.
Yeah.
On the left, it's very saturated, very frontally lit, no shadows. Elizabeth Taylor on the right, lots of shadows. We can't even see her screen left eye, super contrasty. Something bad's about to happen to her. I don't know what movie that's from, but it's something bad. So this is one of the shots in Epic that we did. This is a woman named Rosalinda lit this shot. I love this shot. And this was one, it was like, we just need to make this look as these characters are falling in love. We need to make this feel and look as romantic as possible. So we made it super soft, super warm, super glowy. But if you take away all of that saturation, just the saturation of color, now the shot has a totally different feel. It feels much more like a documentary almost. And then if you shift the color palette entirely to the green side, now it's like, oh, dang, like they're on some alien planet. Something bad's about to happen to these guys. So it's like, even just through color, you can kind of, and of course there's, the color, the actual color of lights, which you can work with. But I kind of, early in my career, again, this is Ice Age 3, I got obsessed with this idea of color, of light to help sell a scene. So what I did was I went through our sequences and I just made little color swatches of the color palettes that were chosen. And these are the colors on the lights themselves. Just because I kind of wanted to see what you look like. And so what you see is that, almost every light has some color in it to match what's going on in reality. So there always is a color temperature. The only one that doesn't is this sequence where the key light was white because it was this glowing ethereal white ghost dinosaur thing named Rudy. But it was a good little study for me into like how all light has color and how those colors are used to enhance the mood of an individual scene. It's the lighting challenge I give. Oh, go ahead.
No, just a question. When you have, for example, because generally the main characters that you are going to lead, and they, for example, in Rio, it has its own color. It's blue. So do you have to kind of adapt, offset these mood colors that you do have depending of the scene? For example.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you've got like so. This is a great example. So these characters are all very warm toned from the Peanuts movie, and so you have to be really. So there's two factors that weigh into it. I think I talked about this somewhere in here, but there's the hero color of the character, right? Shrek is green, the minions are yellow. Like these, you have to stay. And if you take your character too far off their hero color, then they just don't look like themselves. Especially human-ish characters with like warm skin tones. If you put too much cool light on them, they'll end up looking sick or weird. So like lots of times in stuff like this, you don't actually hit the character with too much, like you turn down the saturation way down on those lights and let them almost be neutral, as opposed to pushing them, because it'll. And actually, a couple of these characters look like Pigpen back here. Like if he was the hero character of this shot, you wouldn't want him looking that gray. You'd want him looking a little bit more lightless. So that's why we kept these are more, even though the scene itself is blue. That's where these magenta lights come in to keep a little bit of warmth in there in their skin tones. So yeah, that's a really good question too. So these are just examples from student work where we give them like just primitive shapes and ask them to go find reference from a film or something and match the lighting and the feel. So you can see that like even if they're just like these simple objects, you can still create a mood and emotion in the scene. So this is one of my favorites from The Incredibles. Mr. Incredible is like super warm, glowing skin. Like he's a superhero. He's living his best life. Then when he becomes um, a insurance agent, like that, they intentionally hit him with lots of blue light here to make it like he looks sick. Like he looks, I mean, more so than just his expression. But then when he gets to the end of the movie and he's back to being a superhero, his skin is back to being that warm, blood-filled, pinkish hue. So you can use this, like you can use that hero color stuff to your advantage. This is just food stuff. Like whenever you do food in a film, it's usually surrounded with lots of warm light to make it look appetizing, because blue food is gross and nothing really like they actually like even advise you, if you want to lose weight, eat off of blue plates because it'll make it less so. And like in when was it? Inside Out. She moves to San Francisco. She orders a pizza. Yeah. And this is like, they hit it with all this cool light to be like, oh, this is a gross piece of pizza. Now, if they hit it with warm light, it would look much more appetizing. Funny thing about this one. So this shot in the US and I think in Europe, they put broccoli on it but in Japan, broccoli is like a thing that kids generally like. So in Japan, there's green peppers on the pizza.
Oh, okay. They changed because for them it was like, oh, it's okay. Okay.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, there's lots of things that we had to do for different countries, for different cultural things. For like, my favorite one was in Rio. It was all centered around Carnival, and there's a shot in the movie where a dancer's crossing the street, and the one of the main characters recognizes her and it's like, oh, that's my dentist. Hi, Dr. So-and-so. And she's like, hi, don't forget your appointment. But she's wearing like the Carnival outfit. And it's meant to, and like dancing and like doing this. And an executive looked at it and it was like, okay, that outfit is way too revealing. We need to make it like a one-piece thing. And then we changed it and then we showed it. And the director of the film, again, who's Brazilian, he's like, I'm sorry, what is that?
Yeah.
We're like, oh, we were asked to change that. And he was like, if I show that in Brazil, that would be embarrassing. Like that nobody would know that's not an outfit that anybody would ever wear. And so the compromise was, in the US version of the film, she's wearing a one-piece kind of a bathing suit thing. And in the rest of the world, she's in her normal two-piece, like normal Carnival outfit. So
I'm pleased to live in the rest of the world.
Yes. The very prude United States got a twitch there. So again, so creating mood in Ratatouille, again, super cool tones on this character, and then you make him warm after he has his revelation that the Ratatouille reminds him of his childhood. So that's basically creating mood. Sculpting visual shaping is it's basically like, we work in films generally are projected on a 2D surface, so it's like creating volume and shaping inside, light to dark fall off, like really kind of communicating the volume of the scene. Rembrandt was obviously the best at this. Like, there's this thing called Rembrandt lighting, where it's a character kind of being lit from a 45-degree angle. And the telltale sign of Rembrandt lighting is this little triangle that exists on the opposite side of the face. It kind of crosses the nose and hits this little triangle of light. So you see this a lot. And so this is kind of like, if you need to light a character to look as good as they possibly can, do a little Rembrandt lighting. Like try and get that triangle on the opposite side of the nose, because that's kind of the shaping that's really appealing. And shaping happens everywhere, like even on flat surfaces. Like these are just white walls in a racquetball court or an art gallery or something, but you can still see variation on them. It's if you're ever looking at something and think like, this is way too flat or it looks CG, it's because there's not enough variation in the values. And this research into this kind of led to a side topic, which was because Rembrandt lighting doesn't really work on dark-skinned characters, and I'll go off on a little tangent here, but I think it's important. So, for years, like this idea, like, because this was true in painting and Dutch painting and Dutch Renaissance, and these were the masters, and so everyone, when they replicated lighting, they try to do it the same way. But of course, all the subject matter back then were light-skinned characters, and when you try and transfer this idea to a dark-skinned character, it just doesn't work. Like you end up overlighting the character. You lose their core values, and so this was a real problem in like early cinema. Like we and a lot of this too with photography was because there was this thing called a Shirley card that they would use to calibrate printing machines, and they would always and it was called a Shirley card because I think the original person who posed with this was named Shirley. And of course, for many years, it was always calibrated to white skin. So skin tone was meant to look like white skin or light skin. And again, it just led to films and photography being super blown out and just like kind of off their hero color. So what ended up happening, and the thing that ended up changing this was in the 70s, companies that did product shots for things like chocolate and hardwood were complaining that they weren't able to get nuance in the details of their darker values, right? So I believe it was Fuji or Kodak. I think Kodak came out with a new
Kodak with a specific one just made to be able for the dark tones. Yes, I saw that. That's interesting.
And so you know they like artists started using it, and now and then they were able to get more nuance in dark tones. So and this isn't going to play, but there's a not right now, but later. There's a cinematographer named Ernest Dickerson who was the cinematographer for Do the Right Thing, and he talks about and it was like his teaching that, and plus from this art director Mike Knapp on when I worked on Spies in Disguise, it was all about like for darker skin characters, it's all about like not worrying about the diffuse value, like allowing the diffuse value of the light to be a little bit lower to maintain the hero skin color, but using reflection and specular values in the skin to get the variation in there. And he talked about it in terms of don't think about makeup, think about moisturizer, think about like skin having specularity to it, and you see it all now. It's like all the films that light dark skin characters the best are using this. Like it's an A24 film, Moonlight. It's awesome movie. Insecure on HBO, again, same thing. Lots of like really saturated, colorful lights that are off camera that allow the character's skin to be reflective and get that variation while maintaining the dark core values. It's so important. So whenever you're lighting a dark skinned character, think about that too. It's not always about like pumping in more and more light. It's about like making sure that there are things for their reflections too. And then, and then the eyes. Like I talked about the eyes a lot. So whenever you're lighting, you always in your lighting a character, it's always about the eyes. We talk about the eyes all the time. The basic, I'm not an anatomy expert, but basically there's three main visual parts of the eye. There's the black pupil, the iris, the part of the eye that we talk about, the color, and then the sclera, which is the white outer part, and it's all covered by cornea. And so something kind of strange happens when you light an eye, because the iris is actually concave. It's actually indented into your eye. So when light comes in from, like it's coming in from the screen, left side of the screen now, it's hitting the eye, and actually the colored part of the eye, the opposite side, gets a little bit brighter. So the shaping is actually opposite. So the white part of the eye is lighter on the left side, darker on the right, where the iris is lighter on the right side, darker on the left. It's kind of inverted. And then the eye ding is again picked up because the eye is always wet, and it's perfectly clear, so it's always picking up pure reflections. So you kind of want to capture that. This is a great shot. This was lit by a woman named Nancy Din. And it exemplifies this perfectly. So we've got a window light coming in here. You can sclera is brighter here. It gets darker. The iris is brighter on the opposite side. And then we're getting a reflection of the scene into the eye, and it kind of functions as this eye ding. When we do eye dings or eye highlights or specular highlights in the eye, whatever you want to say, they're always, not always, 99% of the time, we're either positioned at the, if you think of an eye as being a clock, either the 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock position, depending on what side the key light was coming in from. So whenever I do eye lighting, this is just like my little mental checklist, like making sure the sclera is shaped well, the iris is shaped on the other side. All three parts of the eye are distinguishable. You don't want the iris to get so dark that it just looks like one big pupil. And then the eye ding is always at like a 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock position. So we had this hammered into us at Blue Sky. So if you ever watch any Blue Sky movie, the eye dings are we are on point with them all the time.
Do they put some Easter eggs in the reflections sometimes, or from what
Do they
you know?
put some what?
Easter eggs?
Oh, Easter eggs?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that would be a
listen,
great place, no?
I would, yeah, I would put. So lots of times I would put Easter eggs myself that I never have said publicly before in the background. Like I would put pictures of family members in like the windows of buildings in the deep background and stuff like that. Just like I remember in Rio, there was once we couldn't get the lights to turn on in a building, so I was like, I'll just comp something in there, and I did all my friends and family were in photos that were back there. So yeah, we'll drop some Easter eggs in there sometimes. Yeah. And, yeah.
There is a question also of Alexandre. Just it's a side question. He'd like to know what you think about the latest version, the CGI version of The Lion King. If I get.
Oh, I actually haven't seen it in its entirety yet, but I know people that worked on it and they laughed so many times because people are like, a live action version of The Lion King, and they're like, it's literally an animated version of The Lion King. It's just a different style. Like, it's exactly. Like, do they think they got animals to talk? Like, I don't know how they thought that worked or whatever. Listen, anything that gets people work, I'm happy about. But I think that there's a style to that original movie that was special, that was unique, that I think that played into what made it special outside of the story itself. And I think sometimes when you do it as a photoreal thing, it loses the specialness of it a little bit to me. So that's my take. But listen, any work that gets people employed and keeps people paying their bills is all good. All good by me.
It divides a lot.
I support remaking every Disney movie.
Yeah, it divides a lot because I know some people, some colleagues that say, okay, for me it's in my top 10 movies of all time. I didn't see it as well, but the technical stuff is there, technical prowess, because it really looks like a documentary almost. But yeah, I agree with that. Does it bring something to the storytelling compared to the previous one? I don't think so, but that's.
I don't think so either. Like, I think that. I don't think there's something unique about doing it in the documentary. And like you said, the craftsmanship on that film is incredible. Like to get to the point that they did was incredible artistry. But yeah, but like for me, again, going to art school, it's all about every element of your creation needs to have a very specific reason. You need to be able to like justify why everything is a certain way and look a certain way. And like, when you're framing things for an animated short or you're doing a still, you should be able to justify like why the aspect ratio is that way. Why is the camera position there? Why is this element in there? Why is that element not in there? Like everything, I would get grilled for hours and hours and hours and critiques on every decision, and it puts you in a point where you have to make that stuff. And so like maybe there is a very good justified reason as to why a live action Lion King is best for that story, but for me, it never made sense because it wasn't about animals. It was about these animals being a symbol of people and human interaction, so making them more animal-y didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But what do I?
Okay, you can write Alexandre in the comments if you agree with that, or you can disagree. We can agree to disagree as well.
I think I will watch. I just love the process of making films, and I think that I enjoy every single film I've ever seen, to one level or another. Whether it's like there's a movie out there called Book of Henry, which is a bit of a train wreck of a movie. Like aesthetically, it looks good, but the story is like, wow. And it's not a good movie, to be clear. It's not like good. Like you don't have to, but like if you're a film fan, I would recommend watching it because the story structure that they take and the choices they make in that movie are bananas. Like I've never left the film more being like, man, I just need a formulaic rom-com right now. Like I need something to restore my faith in the story arc, because that was not that. Like, you know, but it creates this like moment. Sorry, this is way off topic. But it creates this thing when you're watching any other movie, or like, because I was watching that movie and I was on the edge of my seat, because I was like, they could literally do anything right now, and I would not be surprised, because I have no idea where this thing is going.
Yeah.
Because it was like every time that a normal story would turn right, they turned left, and it was like, what? So I don't know. It was weird. It's a weird movie. Anyway.
No, but you're right. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So you mentioned the black points earlier.
Yeah.
That was a big part of what we're doing too. So shaping is partially like the atmospheric, like aerial perspective. Basically, like when things are closer to the camera, they're darker and more contrasty, and then as you step back into space, they get the dark values get lifted. They get less contrast, less saturation, all that stuff. So you always kind of have to do, if you're doing an environment scene, you always want to do a sanity check on it and make sure that your dark points are progressing the way that you want. You want darker here, lighter as you move back into space, and it helps communicate that depth. And I always do like a little counting trick. So I'm always like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These couple of images are there happen to be 7. They don't have to be 7, but same thing here. Like finding the dark value and allowing it to move back in space. So just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when I'm evaluating my own work, I always kind of do that. The moon is an example of where that doesn't exist, because there's no atmosphere there, and without that astronaut and rover, you would have no idea the scale of those mountains. Are they like little hills? Are they like, you would have no clue as to scale reference. So it's always really important to put that fall off point. And then I just put this one in because it's the sunset on Mars, and it's weird. Sunsets on Mars are blue and not red. So even though it's different on different planets, also the sun is much smaller there. It's just smaller visually in the sky. I don't know. I like Mars. Anyway, and then you want to use some off-camera stuff sometimes to cast shadows into your scene to imply more of an environment around you to create shaping. So, you know, you do like dapple of like little gobos to make light and dark shadow areas to make it look like there are clouds. Again, the moon doesn't have any of that. I have no idea if I'm looking at a space that's like 1 acre or 1 mile, or I have no idea how big this is. So you always kind of want to break that up a little bit.
So you are waiting for Elon Musk to build this rocket to go to Mars, because moon, no.
and same thing, like, so the question I was getting is like stylized films again, like with Peanuts, like there is, even though it like looks flat, there is shaping that still goes on. It's still like adding some sort of value variation differences. And again, like this shot, we've got a gobo of a tree on here. And again, like lighting rig wise, the doghouse would have been lit different than the grass, than the trees in the background, than his head, than his shirt, than his shoes, than his pants, and Snoopy's all kind of one piece. But lots of times we had to light his nose differently to get those specular highlights just right. But like in Spider-Verse, it's like lots of color variation. There's lots of when you're getting transitioning shadows, you get this kind of hatched line thing.
Yeah.
So it's even though it's not the traditional light to dark fall off, there is lots of variation that happens here. Again, in the city, there's darker values in the foreground. It gets lighter as you go back into space. It's just, same thing here, darker foreground, lighter as you go back. We just kind of like those basic structure is always still there. And then the last thing, I'll go through this one quickly because we'll probably be out of time. But you gotta direct the viewer's eye with your lighting. You gotta focus people in on what you want to see, especially on an animated project. You so often only have a second or two to get to have the audience read what it is to get them to focus on the action item of the shot, right? Like if they're holding, I think my shortest shot, I had a shot that was 7 frames long. It was like a quarter of a second long. So it was like hit there and gone. So it was like a chase sequence. It was just like an action. It was like the chain broke, or like the shoe fell off, or whatever the thing is. And so the way you do this is you use contrasting elements, light over dark, complementary colors, warm over cool, to get the audience to really kind of focus in on one area. It happens a lot too when you have a character that is small on screen. So this is Piper in a Pixar animated short. And you can see they intentionally made the background darker behind the character. They did some depth of field stuff to really kind of get us to focus in just on that. So you can do dark over light. This is a shot from Nightcrawler, where you can use the fog of the haze of the rainy evening to get the silhouette of a dark character to really stand out. You can use color, saturation versus desaturated. Again, warm over, like oranges over greens. And Peanut's way to do this a lot with the opening sequence. The opening shots are each character kind of being introduced in their bedroom. So we wanted to make sure to there's a lot of debate over what color we should make their walls, because again, these are very quick shots. We needed the characters to stand out, so we made all their walls to be like darker complementary colors. Again, this is from Quiet Place. This is warm values of his skin over the green sky. This is a promo shot from Secret Life of Kells. This is simple shapes over complex shapes. So the simple eye, the simple line of the nose versus the super detailed leaves all around. And if you ever get a chance to watch Bambi again.
Yeah.
And pay attention to the backgrounds. They're all just like these abstract matte paintings that are incredible. But you can see like behind the possums, they added a little bit lighter of a value, so the darker possums stand out. Where versus behind Bambi, it gets a little bit darker and more green.
Yeah,
and that
like
allows Bambi's warmth. Yeah, so you can craft it the same way too, and you kind of have to. And then this is the same shot, but just racking the focus to focus on different elements of the shot. And then 12 Angry Men, which does a great job of not only there's all these serious dialogues and monologues in these movies, and so what they do is they in this film I kept noticing that they kept creating shadow across the forehead to really get the read on the character's face and the performance there.
There is
so again, yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, there is Alexandre who was mentioning 2 movies like Spectral. I didn't see it, so I cannot say. And also in the old Western movies like the Good, the Bad, and Ugly as well to really make focus.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because again, those are very literal in their storytelling. Where it's like you want. I love this shot from How to Train Your Dragon because it's like because you need to focus it on not necessarily like it's not about Hiccup's face here. It's about his hand, and so they kind of created this glowing. Like if you look, the rim light on Toothless's nose and the rim light on his hand is like this like touching connection point. This is the first time these characters are coming into physical contact with each other, and like so you look at his face and his body, it's kind of flat, but because it's allowing all the attention to go to this point of action. And then this is a shot I lit on Epic. This was like one of the first shots where we had a character, and so for this one, it was like my challenge was. He falls onto this tree branch, and then an arrow gets shot at him, and then he jumps away. So we needed to focus on him. So I kept all the light on him, and then when he falls back, I had him fall back into shadow, so that we can keep the focus on the arrow as it hits the tree branch, and then he disappears, and then we can keep the focus there. So but again, everything about this shot, you get critiqued on the. Shaping on the arrow here, the shaping on this kind of lumpy thing that forms, like how saturated the greens are in the trees back there. Like there's a lot to break down there. But yeah, you really want to keep the focus on the character there. So again, if you can nail these 3 things, the visual shaping, the creating mood, and directing the viewer's eye, you'll have well lit shots. So here's just like a series of shots that we lit over the years. And so again, like each one of these, you can evaluate them in isolation, but they all kind of work fluidly together to really kind of sell the scene. So this has been my thing about lighting my whole career is again, like all of these shots, again, were lit just using simple text prompts. But the thing was is that it wasn't about the software. We were so, and I'll stop sharing my screen now. We were so focused on the how do I say this? We were so focused on what the story that was being told with our visuals that how do I say this? So we were so focused on the visuals, and that's what made the story special. That's what made the images special, was an obsession over these 3 things and making sure that the visuals were right. And at no point during any review that I've ever been in, do we look at something and say like, okay, so what you need to do here is you need to go under the file menu. There's an export feature that allows you to change this setting from this type of format to this. Like nobody cares about that. They only look at it and go, this needs to be brighter, this needs to be better, this needs to be, we need to read this emotion more, and then you have to translate that into a visual element. So there's no button, there's no make pretty render button that exists, and I don't care about. This is why I'm like, AI is cool, like it'll help us speed up our workflows, but like it's never going to replace this visual storytelling that's within us. It can only take what already has been created and copy it, but that's never going to be enough, because you can do that and then there's iterations on it that you want to make, and then there's the individual artist's voice. And like let's project out 10 years and let's say that every film is made with AI. They're all going to look the same. And it's going to take true artistic ingenuity to make something that's unique, that stands out from that crowd.
Yeah.
And that's when the special happens. So
and I'm just curious also, because as you said, you come at the end, so the shot is made, the camera, generally the cameras, everything is set up, and the team is giving it to you. So I'm pretty sure they must be eager to say, okay, what are they going to do after that? Because they have the rhythm. Okay, the rhythm is there, but it's like enhancing, like taking something and say, okay, like almost bringing an old car to someone that is going, okay, make this awesome. And yeah, it's a pressure, but also a pleasure, I guess, because they say, wow, what they did with that is awesome.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, it's a special. You're aware of it when you're working on it. You're very aware of the fact that you're picking up the incredible efforts of a bunch of other people, and there's a pressure there to take what they did and make it even better. And when you can do that, it's really special. Like, because there's no, I don't think there's a greater visual difference in the film than, obviously, like the animation and the performance is huge, the materials are huge, the grooming of the fur and the effects and all that. But when once you do that first pass of lighting, and it all, because that's when everything comes together and it's just like a cohesive thing.
Yeah.
That's really special. Because up until then, it's the shots are really evaluated on their individual components, and only in lighting it's like that's when we talk about the shot in its entirety, and that's when everything.
Yeah, it's so important.
And it's like you said earlier, if you do your job well, nobody will ever notice it, because it's like the score of a movie. You just feel it. You just feel the action. You feel the adventure or the romance or like whatever the thing is.
Yeah, you can say it's beautiful, but it's a bit like when you are like, I don't know, at a wedding, for example, and someone will take photos and another one will take photos. They may have the same camera, but if someone knows a bit about photography, about how to place, how to look, how to frame, well, it's not that's not the same. So it's not just about, as you say, the tools. It's what you want to, the emotion you want to make pass to your scene.
So if there's anybody out here watching who's learning this stuff, like the more advanced things get technically, the more important it is to understand the core concepts of what makes a good image, because that's going to be the thing that distinguishes you from everybody else. And it's your ability to pick out the things that are working and eliminate the things that aren't, because it's just like photography. Like we all have amazing cameras in our pockets all the time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that there's more amazing, there are definitely more photos than were out there 30 years ago, but they're still professional photographers because they have a unique skill set, and their skill set is to use this technology to make something cool.
Yeah.
The other thing I was pointing out too is this is from somebody who taught a class at SCAD when I was there, and we asked him, because he'd done a bunch of work on visual effects movies, and we asked him like, what was he most proud of? And he said that there was a sequence in the Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt rom-com, As Good as It Gets. That was his favorite thing he ever did. And this is a guy, again, he like worked on like Jurassic Park and Terminator.
Yeah, because it's super realistic. This one is.
Yeah, but what had happened was they had shot a scene. They filmed a scene in New York, and the film itself had been like ruined. Like something happened in the post-processing, and it was all scratched up, and they couldn't do. But it was too expensive to go back and shoot it. They couldn't. Jack Nicholson was unavailable or something, and so they had to work with it. So him and his team spent months fixing this bad footage, and you will never notice in the film. And it was just like this totally invisible thing that it just looks like any other sequence in the movie. And so much of it was some of it was 3D, some of it was hand painted, some of it was this, some of it was that. But it was just a way of getting it all back together. And again, this was 1996, 97, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
this was a long time ago.
They both won the Oscar, I think, Jack Nicholson and Ellen Hunt in this one. This year. Yeah. I remember as a spectator, and I cannot. You tell me that I didn't know at all. You cannot notice it for sure.
Yeah, it's and there's all this kind of discord right now around films having too much CG in them and that kind of thing. And it's I think what people are arguing about is their style. It's the style they don't like, because there's so much 3D in every movie that just completely goes unnoticed. Trying to think of one recently, like Wolf of Wall Street. If you ever you don't think about that as a heavy VFX film, but go back and look at the breakdowns. There's a ton of VFX work that went into that movie.
To me, there was more problem about too much 3D at the beginning of 3D. When Toy Story came and was a success, many studios says, "Oh, okay, let's put 3D because it works and that's what people." And they didn't understand that. No, they don't care about 3D. That was the story which was good, and it happens to me being it's 3D. But there was 5-6 years where Pixar didn't have any competition because the other studio was, let's make 3D and people will want to see it, and it wasn't the case. And I think it started maybe after with Shrek, who made something that was interesting. There was few of them. Ice Age, of course, but before that, it was let's make 3D to make 3D. Except Pixar, because they have this storytelling.
It's
not the case.
It's
anymore.
Exactly right. And it's the same thing right now with. So I'm doing a lot of explorations into spatial storytelling, augmented reality, virtual reality kind of a thing, because we're at that same point. Right now, because of the way the technology is, we're limited on how good the visuals can look, and so people keep making VR and AR things that are just kind of gimmicky, that are but it's I've been trying to explore this concept of how do we tell unique stories in this new space when we're not confined to this box. How does it work when anybody can look anywhere? How does it work when a 6-foot tall Ferdinand talks to a little mouse and you have to look up and look down, and what are some of the nuances of that? But again, none of it matters if you're not telling a good story.
Yeah.
You're not engaging the audience and allowing them to transcend the medium and whatever, and really get absorbed in what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to look at the chat, guys. People, if you're in the chat, it's the right time to ask questions, because I think we are reaching the end of this wonderful moment. So yeah, I know there is I don't know how many delay do have, something 15 seconds. But yeah, that's interesting. I remember going to GDC, which is the game developer conference, 5-6 years ago, and it was the big boom about virtual reality with the Oculus, etc. And seeing people making some stuff in VR just to make some stuff in VR. Now it's going to be the big boom, but without any intention. The only intention was being present, and we had a ton of content, of bad content because of that, and which I think that's why also VR got a bad press for a few years, because it was okay. I'm going to the local store, and half of it doesn't bring anything compared to what I could do anywhere else, or there is nothing new or interesting. And well, with the Apple right now in the place, and I know you are experimenting a lot with it. I'm pretty confident some people will come with interesting stuff to showcase.
I mean, there's also a difficulty right now. So I was talking to people who make AR experiences, and they bring up a really good point. It's okay, so let's say that there are, say you want to make something unique to the Apple Vision Pro. There's only 150 to 200,000 people with this thing at the most.
You
So if you sell, like, let's say you, because it will take money to develop it, but like then you sell it. Let's say you'd have to sell it to everybody for a high price tag to like make a business out of it.
Yeah.
And so until there's more users, until there's more like, but for right now, but it's like, but if you're a creative, now's the sweet spot. Now's the time that you get in and make whatever you want, because it's like, it's so cool to me because it's the Wild West, right?
Yeah.
There's so many like rules that we've been. I had somebody just tell me this, like, and explain to me this way, like we've been abstracting our 3D world into a 2D image for as long as there have been people doing cave painting.
Yeah.
And it was cave paintings, and it was paintings, and it was photography, and now it's film, and it's all these screen-based things, these 2D interpretations of our world around us, which sometimes works great, other times pretty bad at it. Like it doesn't fully communicate the space. But now we have this technology where we can actually envelop ourselves in this surrounding. We can make a discussion between two characters in the room with us, or like, you know, something that we can more clearly communicate the world around us in another 3D environment. And like, but we don't know how to do that yet. We don't, nobody knows, like nobody's ever done it. And so it's been, there are going to be like some wild, I can't wait for the things that fail, because I've already had some of those in VR, but like, I want to see more of them. I want to see things that are like, there's a guy, sorry, last topic, and then I should get going. But so when we were doing Spies in Disguise, this was one of my favorite things that happened with these. It was the same directors who directed Nimona. They were so open to understanding that we weren't just like cogs in the wheel, that we were artists with our own unique ideas. And they were like very open with this. At one point, they were like, "Hey guys, so we'd love to create a unique opening montage for Spies in Disguise. So what we're going to do is we're going to open it up to everybody. Anybody who wants to like pitch their idea for an opening montage sequence, go for it."
Okay.
And
cool.
we'd already known the reference. Yeah, it was like a spy movie. I did one that I can't remember what it was. I was pretty proud of it, but it was basically like, it was James Bond-esque in its delivery, but it was like, but it was very like sleek and very cool. And then this coworker of mine, a guy named Sergey, he came up with this idea that was just bananas. It was like he wanted to do but like the camera was the head of a real pigeon and moved in a way that pigeons really move. So it was like 45-degree angles that like lunged forward, that would just like boom, 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 and it was just like, it would just go back and forth, and like, and then he did this whole mock-up of it, and it was like from the perspective of a pigeon going through, and it was like, this is weird. It didn't work. It was very jarring, but like I loved it so much because I've never seen a camera move that way, and it was because it was kind of like, it was a wider angle, so it was like a huge, like a very like fisheye lens moving at this way that was like very, very atypical. And I was like, dude, and it definitely didn't work. And we're like, we're definitely not going to do that. But the reaction from the room was amazing. Whoa. People people lit up and laughed about it. And I still think, and that was like 6 years ago or whatever. And I still think about that pretty regularly. Every time I see a pigeon, I'm like, God, Sergey, this camera.
Do you know why they move like that?
No.
Because they cannot move the eyes. So they do what we do with the eyes. We spot, for us as human or mammals, we move the eyes. The eyes are moving like that, and we are going from a position. But for them, it's fixed. So they do the same, but instead of moving the eyes, they move the full head. So that's.
But he was like
stupid, but
and he even because he started with because he found reference where somebody had put a GoPro on a bird's head, and it was a strange because it was like we all presented our ideas, and everyone was like, oh, I watched Dr. No or whatever, Moonraker, and I'm gonna do the Moonraker opening or whatever. And then he came in with this footage of just like cameras being strapped to pigeons' heads, and we were like, dude, what are you?
Yeah.
And it was the most like roundabout presentation, and he was like, and so this is what I made, and it was like, oh my god, that's amazing. That like I was like that. It was just such a such a unique view. So I try and get there because sometimes I fall back on what's safe when I'm creating something, and I'm like, I gotta find my pigeon cam moment.
Yeah, there is no limitation. Well, you will find it. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Michael, that was awesome. Thanks for being here. I think we learned a lot. We had a few questions. We answered everything in the chat. Once again, thanks a lot. Super refreshing to talk about lighting. That's the first time we do that, and that was great. For people we see in 2 weeks, I don't know what I will talk about yet. I'll find that. And after that, I will be at GDC, GDC Game Developer Conference in San Francisco. That should be fun. And yeah, thanks again. I don't know if you want to say hi to someone or I give you the last word, so go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I know, yeah, hello to Mio, and I don't know if Louise is still out there, and Alexandra, like all you guys, like it's good to chat with all of you. Anybody else who's watching this on recording, like I said, I am a open book on this stuff, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, my email, whatever. I'm just
the newsletter,
and subscribe to the newsletter too. Yeah, exactly. You just reply to the newsletter comes as an email. Just reply to it. It comes straight to me. So just reply to my newsletter, and yeah, and I'm super excited.
Well, thanks again.
First Transformers movie was really good integration too.
Which one?
That was a good one. So I saw in the chat window that the first Transformers movies was great integration of CGI VFX in the movie. Yeah, true. I mean, visually that was actually I had last thing.
Go ahead.
I had 2 wow moments in my life. One was Jurassic Park, the Mercury character, the Mercury cop from Terminator 2. Okay. The one that he that stuff is insane. And then one of them was the Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, yes.
When he came out and there were these tentacles moving with the subsurface scattering, I was like, oh my gosh. Also, the Revenant, that bear attack sequence was insane.
Yeah.
I watched that at my office with all of the other 3D artists, and we were all like, pause the movie. How are they doing that? Wait, what just happened? We made them go back and watch that sequence again because we were like, that was bananas. And then that stuff really took my breath away. It was just insane. So
yeah, not original, but I would say Toy Story on my side. That was wow. We can tell story with this medium. That's wow. I was young, and it really inspires me as well for the rest of my career decisions. Well, Michael, thanks again.
By the way, I could do that conversation all day too.
Okay, we'll continue. Okay, we'll let you go, and we'll continue. Okay, thanks right. Everyone. See you in 2 weeks. Follow Michael everywhere you can, and Michael, we talk each other soon. Ciao.
I'll see you at GDC. Bye.
Bye.